It was barely 7 a.m. when my peaceful morning exploded into chaos. I walked out onto my porch, coffee still steaming in my hand, only to find HOA Karen hunched over the driver's side door of my truck, ramming a shiny brass master key into the lock like she was trying to defuse a bomb. She spun around with fake outrage dripping off her face. "Why won't this master key open your vehicle? This is a violation." I hadn't said a single word. Not yet. According to her, every vehicle in the neighborhood had to allow HOA emergency access. And because her magical key didn't work on my truck, I was now suspicious. When the key failed again, she gasped dramatically, whipped out her phone, and dialed 911 right there in my driveway. "Hello. Yes, I'd like to report a non-compliant male refusing a mandatory HOA safety inspection on his vehicle." She pointed at me like I was stealing my own truck. What she didn't know, the non-compliant male she was reporting was the county sheriff. Me. Before we go further, comment your city and local time below, and make sure you subscribe to Neighbor Wars HQ for more unbelievable HOA battles. Now, I've dealt with unreasonable people. Comes with a badge. But nothing prepared me for the creative level of nonsense Karen weaponized daily. Before she tried to break into my truck with a universal HOA key, I honestly thought she was just an overzealous HOA president with too much time, too many clipboards, and not enough hobbies. I was wrong, spectacularly wrong. To understand how she ended up calling 911 on a sheriff without realizing it, we need to rewind a few years, back to when I first moved into this quiet cul-de-sac, right at the border of the HOA's jurisdiction. My house sat close enough that Karen could glare at it, but far enough that she had zero authority over any inch of my property. And that technicality was the greatest irritation of her entire personality. Our first introduction, no greeting, no welcome, no cookies. She marched up my driveway with a clipboard tucked under her arm like she was preparing to prosecute me. "Law enforcement vehicles may cause unnecessary alarm," she said, nodding at my patrol cruiser. "I'll need you to park that elsewhere." I explained politely it was legally registered, legally parked, and legally none of her concern. She forced a smile that never reached her eyes, wrote something on her clipboard, and walked away like she'd filed my pre-eviction paperwork. And that was just her warm-up round. A few days later, I found a paper taped to my cruiser. "Unauthorized government imagery visible from public view, $45 fine." Government imagery? She meant the sheriff's badge on the door. I laughed, peeled it off, and put in a binder, not knowing that binder would one day need a table of contents. Over the next year, I got dozens of these citations, all printed at home. Unauthorized terrain modification, tire tracks after rain. Visual intimidation, my chrome grille reflected sunlight. Authority symbolism without HOA clearance. That one made me cry laughing. But everything escalated the day she demanded I hand over a copy of my car keys for HOA emergency access. I told her, absolutely not. She stared like no one had ever denied her before. Then she said the phrase that should have been a warning sign. "We'll revisit this." Fast forward to the morning, she tried to break into my truck and called 911. Deputy Ray showed up, confirmed who I was, and watched Karen freeze like a computer buffering at 2% battery. She eventually stormed off, but humiliation doesn't stop Karen. It feeds her. By the next morning, she escalated. Bright pink flyers plastered across every mailbox, lamppost, and trash bin, covered in glitter glue, as if she were promoting a bake sale instead of a crusade. Urgent community action required. Stop the non-compliant vehicle, she claimed. My truck was a safety threat, refused HOA protocols, and insisted the neighborhood vote to require universal HOA vehicle access keys. In other words, a key to everyone's car. My neighbor Mark knocked on my door, holding a flyer. "Is this about you?" "Yep." He sighed. "She fined me for having a red car last week. Said it was visually aggressive." Not surprising. Later that day, I found a yellow notice on my windshield, "Excessive vehicle presence, $65." In my own driveway. I added it to my growing binder. The next day, Karen held an emergency HOA meeting. Someone recorded it and sent it to me. Her presentation included a blurry low-angle photo of my truck, a pie chart showing my vehicle as the number one cause of community instability, a slide titled Potential Threat Indicators, Size, Color, Reflectiveness, Authority, Symbolism, Owner Noncompliance. By the next morning, I had 3 new notices: reflective paint disturbance, unauthorized law enforcement symbols, driveway shadow imbalance. Yes. She fined me for the shape of my truck's shadow. That's when I knew this wasn't just HOA drama anymore. Karen wasn't annoyed. She was obsessed. And then came the moment everything changed. The morning I walked outside and found 26 neon orange flags lined up along my driveway, perfectly spaced like runway lights leading straight to my truck. Each one said, claim pending, vehicle access, gate under review. A gate. She wanted to put a gate across my driveway. That was the moment Karen crossed the line, not just the property line, the legal line. What she didn't know, every step she took, every flyer, every fake fine, every flag, was building the perfect case against herself. And this war? It was just getting started. The second Karen stormed off, I knew one thing. Her silence didn't mean surrender. It meant she was regrouping. That afternoon, I drove back from town and nearly laughed myself into the next dimension. A tow truck sat at the edge of my driveway, the driver staring at a clipboard like it was the Dead Sea Scrolls. I stepped out. Everything all right? He looked from me to the paper back to me. HOA lady said this truck was abandoned and needed removal. Abandoned? The truck I drove yesterday. I pointed at the sheriff's emblem on the door. I'm the owner. Color drained from his face like he'd seen a ghost filing taxes. Oh man, she definitely didn't mention that. He folded the HOA paper like it was radioactive and practically sprinted back into his tow truck. Within seconds, he peeled out like someone just threatened to fine him for being alive. I stood there, staring at my driveway, the neon flags, the tow truck dust trail, and the absolute absurdity Karen was manufacturing. This wasn't petty anymore. This was escalation. She wasn't just trying to control my vehicle. She was trying to build a story where I was the threat, where she was the hero. And here's the thing about people who build false narratives. They always corner themselves eventually. That evening, as sunset painted the sky orange and purple, I quietly pulled each neon orange flag from the ground. One by one, a slow demolition of Karen's fantasy kingdom. I stacked them neatly in a box labeled Vehicle Incidents Evidence. Because one thing was clear, the master key was just her opening act. The flags were her expansion plan. And something told me the finale was about to get a whole lot louder and a whole lot dumber. The next morning, the clamp, I stepped outside expecting peace. Maybe she'd scream at a tree. Bake disappointment-shaped cookies. Something normal. Instead, my truck had been booted. A giant yellow wheel clamp, like a medieval torture device for cars, locked onto my front tire. Bold stencil across it read, HOA impound, non-compliant vehicle. I set my coffee on the hood. I crouched down. I prayed she hadn't scratched the rim. Olominote dogdonglet. From the lock, release fee, $350 processing fee, $25 administrative fee, $15 total, $390. Karen woke up and chose grand felony cosplay. Behind me, I heard sandals. Triumphant sandals. Perhaps now, she said smugly, you'll learn to respect community authority. I stood up. You put a boot on my truck? It's not your truck, she snapped. It's a community-adjacent vehicle and subject to oversight. She said it like she was citing the Constitution. Karen, I exhaled. This is illegal. No, she corrected proudly, tapping her clipboard. This is proactive neighborhood safety enforcement. You immobilized a law enforcement vehicle. Her eyes narrowed. A vehicle used to intimidate residents. Frankly, you should thank me. I had 2 options, lose my sanity or enjoy the live comedy show. Remove the clamp, I said. She recoiled like I'd asked for her soul. Absolutely not. You will pay the release fee like everyone else. Nobody else has ever had a boot on their car. Because nobody else has been this non-compliant. Her voice cracked like she was seconds away from flinging herself onto the pavement for dramatic effect. I pulled out my phone. She stiffened. I took pictures. Clamp. Driveway. Karen. Clipboard. Theme. She scoffed. Oh, please. You think pictures scare me? No, but they'll help the police. Her mouth fell open. Police? You wouldn't dare? Oh, idare. I called non-emergency dispatch. Policy says I can't handle my own case. A few minutes later, Deputy Hernandez rolled up. He stepped out, took one look at the clamp, and gave me a "Dear God, not again" expression. Karen ran toward him like he was her long-lost savior. Officer, arrest him for violating HOA impound protocols. Hernandez blinked. Ma'am, there's no HOA impound protocol. There should be. That's not how laws work. She jabbed her pen at the clamp. This vehicle is out of compliance. I tried the master key. I raised a finger. Karen, stop. Confessing to crimes. Hernandez asked, did you put this on the sheriff's vehicle? Yes, she said proudly. It's heavy duty. Comes in different colors. Ma'am, this is tampering with property you don't own. It's vehicle interference. Karen gasped. Vehicle interference. How dare you? He's not implying, I said. He's reading the law. She shrieked. This is oppression. Of the HOA. If righteousness were fuel, Karen could power a small city. Hernandez issued an official warning and ordered her to remove the clamp. She refused. He repeated himself. She refused harder. Ma'am, he said finally, if you don't remove it, we will. She stomped over and ripped it off with the fury of a betrayed supervillain, dragging the clamp away while muttering about tyrants and road pickup trucks. She retreated, but only temporarily. Karen's next attack, paperwork warfare. 2 days later, she returned. Not with force, with paperwork. Glossy brochures titled, The Great Vehicle Harmony Initiative. She taped them to every door like she was distributing coupons for the apocalypse. Rules included mandatory HOA access keys for all vehicles, rotating HOA-controlled driveway schedules, monthly driveway inspections, fines for visually disruptive automobile silhouettes. I received 13 violations in 1 week, including parking too confidently, truck height, intimidation potential, reflective surfaces too, reflective tire, grooves emotionally sharp, shadow longer than 5 feet, owner attitude non-compliant. I built binder number 2. Then binder number 3. Karen was spiraling, and she knew it. So she escalated again. The barricade. One quiet Wednesday, I returned from the grocery store to find a full plywood barricade blocking my driveway. Spray painted across it. HOA parking zone, authorized vehicles only, a laminated sign. Violators will be fined. I lifted the whole thing with one hand and placed it beside a tree. Slapped a sticky note on it. Nice decor. Wrong house. The next morning, a city inspector knocked. Someone reported a dangerous, illegal structure on this property. Yep, Karen reported herself. He inspected it, snorted, shook his head, took pictures, and left laughing. Karen watched from across the street, arms folded, boiling with silent rage. And silence is when people like her become dangerous to themselves, because she was already planning the next disaster. The initiative packet. On the third morning, my mailbox thudded with a glossy packet titled, The Community Vehicle Harmony Initiative, presented by the Bluff Neighborhood Mobility Council, a council that does not exist. Inside was a letter from Acting Coordinator Kay Allen. Karen had rebranded herself. The packet demanded vehicle registration with her council, emergency access keys, surprise driveway inspections, harmony-based parking, redistribution penalties for unauthorized vehicle silhouettes. At the back, a payment page. $89 mobility harmony fee, PayPal QR code. Bluff Vehicle Safety Fund. I burst out laughing at 7:30 in the morning until I looked up and saw her staring at me across the street, wearing a blazer, fake earpiece, standing like she was guarding the Pentagon. I held up the packet. A new council? She nodded. Formed due to overwhelming community demand. What community? Concerns may remain anonymous. For safety. My truck shadow is threatening them now. She refused to acknowledge reality. Your vehicle has become a symbol of disorder, she whispered. Residents are frightened. A symbol. My truck. I closed the packet. Karen, this is fraud. No, she said. This is leadership. What you're doing is illegal. What I'm doing, she declared, pointing at the sky, is necessary. For who? For everyone. She thrust a clipboard at me, signed a compliance acknowledgement. No, she scribbled. Refusal. Additional fee. $13. Chaos math. Karen strutted away, believing she'd won something. But inside, I spread everything across my table. Every notice, picture, violation, video, the clamp, the barricade, the flyers, the packet. Because Karen had no idea, she wasn't building power. She was building a perfect case file against herself. By the time I finished stacking all the paperwork on my dining table, I realized something. I wasn't holding evidence. I was holding a career-ending scrapbook Karen made for herself. There was enough proof here to wallpaper a courtroom, a sheriff's office, and maybe even a museum exhibit titled, A Study in HOA Madness. I called the sheriff's office, not as the sheriff, but as a resident filing a complaint. Protocol said someone else had to handle the case. So Hernandez took the report, flipping through each page like he was reviewing the Bible's deleted chapters. Bluff Neighborhood Mobility Council, he asked. Didn't exist until today, I said. He whistled. She really doesn't know when to stop. No, I sighed. She really doesn't. He told me to send everything. Photos, timestamps, screenshots, the entire avalanche. And as I forwarded him files, I already knew what he'd say next. This might cross into attempted fraud. He wasn't wrong. That evening, while I sat on my porch rereading her harmony packet, considering whether vehicular silhouette aggression should become a running joke at the station, my neighbor Jill crept up the walkway like she was sneaking out past curfew. She glanced around for Karen like one would check for a lurking mountain lion. Can we talk? She whispered. Of course. She stepped closer, gripping her clipboard like a life raft. We need your help. The HOA board, we're done. We can't deal with her anymore. I nodded. What happened this time? Jill inhaled deeply. She's demanding we form a parking brigade. Weekly driveway inspections. And she tried to find a board member because her SUV felt rebellious. I rubbed my face. Yeah, sound about right. Jill exhaled dramatically. We want to vote her out. We just need proof, stuff she can't deny later. I gestured toward the mountain of binders inside. I've got proof. Her eyes widened. How much? 3 binders so far, working on a 4th. Jill looked like someone who had just been shown the exit of a long, dark tunnel. This could work, she whispered. But you'll have to be at the meeting. I'll be there. She hesitated. One more thing. Did she really call 911 on you? Yes. And didn't know you were the sheriff? Correct. Jill covered her face. Oh God, this is worse than we thought. She left with a promise. The board would prepare the motion to remove Karen. But Karen? She smelled rebellion. And like any dictator watching cracks form in her cardboard empire, she escalated. The next morning, another envelope appeared on my doorstep. Emergency Vehicle Harmony Audit. Mandatory participation required. Inside, a fresh threat of a $150 non-participation fee. And taped under my doormat, a handwritten note. Your resistance strengthens my resolve. Who writes villain monologues to their neighbors? But she wasn't just targeting me anymore. That afternoon, a small group of exhausted residents knocked. She fined me for washing my car too loudly, one said. She fined me because my headlights were too assertive, another added. She fined me for insufficient wheel humility, a third muttered. Wheel humility? Karen wasn't spiraling. She was pulling the entire neighborhood into her gravitational insanity. But the good news? Every fake rule, every bogus fine, every desperate power grab was more evidence. Evidence that would end her presidency and drag her straight into real legal consequences. Friday's meeting couldn't come fast enough. The community center buzzed like a shaken hornet's nest. Residents arrived clutching stacks of violations, screenshots, photos, some holding posters like they were protest signs. One guy taped up a giant print of his wheel humility notice with the caption, "How is this real?" Jill approached me, stress-bun wound, so tight it threatened structural integrity. She doesn't know what's coming, she whispered. She will in 20 minutes, I replied. For the first time in 10 years, Jill said, the board is united. That's what happens when tyranny arrives wearing orthopedic sandals. She choked back a laugh. Stay close. She's going to make this difficult. Oh, I knew that. Karen doesn't breathe without making something difficult. Right on cue, the door slammed open. Karen entered like she was headlining a Broadway performance titled, I Am the HOA. Navy blazer. Fake earpiece. Clipboard held like a sacred relic. Arms full of mobility council packets nobody asked for. The entire room groaned. There will be order, she declared. It hasn't started yet, someone muttered. Karen marched to the podium. Tonight's meeting will be handled by no, Jill said sharply. Silence spread like a shockwave. Karen blinked. She wasn't used to hearing that word. No, guilty petit. The board will run this meeting. You will sit down. Karen's jaw nearly unhinged. I am the HOA president, she hissed. For now, someone whispered. Karen spun around. Who said that? No one answered. Finally, she huffed and slammed into a metal chair. The meeting began. Jill laid out the agenda, then read the charges. Unauthorized fines, fraudulent documents, collection of money under a fake organization, harassment of multiple residents. Karen shot up, shouting lies. See, deal commended. Shockingly, she sat. That was my cue. I stepped forward with a simple folder, no theatrics needed. Good evening, I began. Most of you know me as your neighbor. Some of you recently learned I'm also the county sheriff. A ripple of uncomfortable laughter spread. I opened the folder. Here is the sequence of events. Photo of Karen attempting to open my truck with a brass master key. Gasps. She then called 911, not realizing she was calling the sheriff. Murmurs. Slide after slide, the boot on my truck. The tow attempt. The illegal barricade. The Harmony packets. The PayPal QR code for her fake mobility council. Karen finally broke. That clamp was high quality, she shrieked. Someone in the back laughed, so hard he snorted. I finished. The evidence has been submitted to the county. Tonight, the board will decide her HOA status. A board member stood. I move for immediate removal of Karen Allen as HOA president. The room erupted. Those in favor? Hands. Dozens. A tidal wave. All opposed. Karen's lone hand shot up, trembling with rage. Jill nodded. Motion carries. Karen froze, stunned, betrayed by her own unchecked ego. Then she pointed at me. This isn't over. You can't escape Harmony. I will return stronger than ever. She stormed out, slamming the door so hard dust fell from the ceiling. The room exploded into cheers. But I just watched the door, because I knew something no one else did. Karen wasn't done. Karen doesn't retreat. Karen regroups. For 2 days, the neighborhood basked in peace. People water plants, wash cars, walk dogs without fear of being cited for reckless leash angle. But peace is never the end of story. It's the eye of the storm. On Friday morning, a strange envelope landed in my mailbox. Linen paper, Goldseal, professional printing, return address, P.O. Box 214, Bluff County Oversight Initiative. I sighed. Inside was a letter. Mandatory mediation session due to concerns regarding driveway harmony. Failure to appear may result in further action. Signed, Acting Coordinator K. Allen. She reinvented herself again. Karen wasn't running an HOA anymore. She was creating her own government department. Because she hadn't lost her power. She'd simply changed the logo. That morning, Karen leveled up her chaos. She sent out a brand new initiative packet, but this time she tucked in a voluntary community contribution form with a suggested donation of $140 for a driveway beautification project nobody approved. And, just like always, the QR code went straight to a PayPal account under her own name. Not creativity, criminal ambition. I photographed every page, every signature she forged, every fake logo she created, and filed it all neatly into Karen Evidence, Volume 4. That binder was now thicker than most local phone books. 10 minutes later, my doorbell rang. It was my son, not in uniform, but carrying the same calm, steady presence he always had. I handed him the packet. He skimmed the first lines, shook his head, and muttered, "She's not reinventing the HOA, she's resurrecting it." Turns out she'd mailed the same letter to half the neighborhood. Someone had already dropped their copy off at the sheriff's office. He took a sip of coffee and sighed. Dad, she's not doubling down. She's entering criminal territory, impersonating authority, collecting fraudulent fees. This is beyond harassment. Can we charge her? I asked. Not yet, he said, but we're getting close. That was our constant balance, professional distance and procedural caution. He handled everything by the book, and I respected that. But even he admitted, she's unraveling. Be careful. I smirked. I'm always careful. He gave me a look. Okay, I'm usually careful. We laughed, but beneath it, the air felt heavy, the way it does right before a thunderstorm breaks. Karen's midnight mission that night. My motion sensor flicked on at 11:47 p.m. I checked the camera feed, expecting raccoons. It wasn't raccoons. It was Karen. Reflective vest. Cargo pants. Gloves. Tape measure. Clipboard. And, God help us, a stud finder. She stalked along the edges of my driveway like some kind of unhinged land surveyor. She measured my tire angle, the distance from my lawn, the emotional aura of the driveway, or whatever she told herself at night. When she pressed the stud finder to my fender like she expected it to reveal state secrets, I'd had enough. I stepped onto the porch. Evening, Karen. She gasped and dropped her tape measure like it was covered in acid. I'm conducting an assessment. At midnight? Timing is irrelevant when harmony is at stake. Karen, get off my property. I have authority under the Oversight Initiative. No, what you have is a vest you bought on Amazon. It's a uniform. No, Karen, it's a vest. She stomped her foot like a toddler denied dessert. You're obstructing justice. No, I said, stepping forward. I'm obstructing trespassing. I pointed to the camera. You're being recorded. She froze. The one thing she couldn't handle was her imagination being compared to reality. She backed away, muttering like a deranged prophecy reader. This will not stop harmony. This will not stop the initiative. She disappeared into the cul-de-sac, her reflective vest glowing like an angry firefly from a parallel universe. Fraud, fear, and the breaking point the next morning, half the street found identical envelopes on their doorsteps. Some were confused. Some were scared. Karen had conditioned them to fear her clipboard like a weapon. By noon, I collected 11 more letters from residents who didn't trust themselves not to burn them. I sent everything to Deputy Hernandez. His call came quickly. Yeah, we've got enough for charges. None of this nonsense is registered with the state. She's fabricated authority, documents the whole thing. Go ahead, I told him. He hesitated. One problem, she's probably expecting retaliation. She might melt down before we serve the papers. He was right. She did. Karen versus reality, the street showdown I heard shouting from the road. Karen stood beside her Prius, waving a giant, rolled-up poster like she was leading a revolution. The community is at risk, she screamed. The sheriff's vehicle is a threat to harmony. People peeked through curtains. Others stepped outside, all of them exhausted. Then she unrolled the poster. A massive satellite photo of the neighborhood with my truck circled in thick red marker, surrounded by dramatic arrows pointing to labels like unknown vehicle energy, zone potential disruption, field driveway, dominance risk. A kid whispered. Is he a superhero? No, got insnapped. He is a menace. Right then, 2 sheriff's cruisers rolled in. She paled. Hernandez approached calmly. Karen Allen, we need to speak with you. She puffed up like a pigeon preparing for war. Finally, justice arrives. Yes, he said, handing her papers. It does. She skimmed the first line. Then it happened. She screamed. Not a normal scream. The scream of a woman whose imaginary kingdom just got bulldozed by actual law. You can't do this. I am the initiative. No, Hernandez replied. You're being charged with harassment, falsifying documents, and attempting to operate an unlicensed entity. My initiative is legal. It doesn't exist. It exists spiritually. Spiritual HOAs don't count. She ranted, stomped, declared herself a guardian, accused me of staging a coup. I just crossed my arms and waited. Finally, Hernandez delivered the command. Ma'am, You're ordered to cease all oversight activities immediately. No more letters, no more initiatives. Violate this, and you'll face further action. Karen glared at me with nuclear fury. This is your doing. No, I said. This is your doing. She jumped in her Prius, slammed the door, and sped off. No threats, no declarations, no last speech, just silence. Peace, but temporary. That evening the neighborhood changed. Kids played. Dogs barked freely. People washed their cars without fearing noise citations. Karen's shadow lifted. But peace felt fragile, because Karen didn't apologize, didn't reflect, didn't learn. People like Karen don't stop. They relocate. The Midnight Watcher weeks passed quietly. Too quietly. Then one night my trail cam pinged. A lone figure stood at the very edge of my property line. Unmoving. Silent. Reflective vest glowing under the infrared. Karen. She never stepped onto my land. She just stared for 10 minutes, like she was mourning her lost territory. Then she turned and vanished into the trees. It was her message. She wasn't done. Just displaced. The glitter bomb goodbye. 2 weeks later, a package arrived. Addressed to Sheriff's Dad, Cabin 12. Classic Karen humor. Inside was a glitter bomb, but she disabled it. Just glitter sitting harmlessly at the bottom. A note read, "This is what restraint looks like. You're lucky I'm taking the high road." Symbolic. Petty. Peak, Karen. My son called it. Artistic HOA aggression. He wasn't wrong. The final reveal months later, spring came. Everything relaxed. The neighborhood healed. Until Tanya from County Records showed up with a folder. Inside were documents for a new HOA being formed 30 miles south. Messy. Unfinished. But one name was crystal clear. Proposed HOA president. Karen Allen. I closed the folder slowly. She's starting over, Tanya said. New neighborhood. New victims. They'll learn, I replied. Some lessons can't be taught. Only experienced. And with that, the Karen saga finally ended. For us. Not for them. Final OUTRO plus CTA. Neighbor Wars HQ style. If this whole HOA saga taught me anything, it's this. Real authority doesn't come from clipboards, vests, or made-up regulations. It comes from responsibility, respect, and knowing when to back off. Karen never learned that. But you did by surviving the chaos right alongside me. Now I want to hear from you. What would you have? Done as someone try to open your car with a master key? Drop your thoughts below. I read every comment. And if you enjoy these unbelievable real-life HOA battles, make sure you like, comment, share, and subscribe to Neighbor Wars HQ. Because this neighborhood, it may be calm today, but there's always another HOA story waiting around the corner.